Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us today. Um, I would like to welcome everyone to our our March program, technical session and general meeting. So today is going to be an interesting one as we have someone who will be speaking to us on a very important topic. So I'm sure that all of us will go home at the end of the day, hoping that the question will be answered very, very well. So my name is Engineer Dr. Stephen Ugwan, and I'm the branch chairman of NSC Glasgow branch. Um, we are the 81st branch of the NSC, and we have a lot of activities that we do here in order to keep our members, the engineers here in the UK and both Nigeria, actively engaged. Most of our events revolve around technical session, technical visits, trainings for members, professional CPD programs, and a whole lot of things that we'll do here as a branch. And I'll be speaking to you about something we are planning for the month of July this year. And I'm sure that all of us hopefully will be able to join us here in Glasgow. Today's event will be made up of two parts. One will be the technical session, and then we'll go into a general meeting. So we invite everyone, if you are able to, please feel free to join us and observe our meeting and see what we are doing here as a branch. So like I said before, we're a charity registered in the UK. As such, most of our activities, we have a bit of regulation. We may not be able to do everything that is done in Nigeria. Also, like I said, we support our members here merely to uphold engineering practices, best practices to improve on themselves. We create collaboration opportunities for our members and supporting organizations as well. And our goals, like you see here, revolve around innovating, encouraging innovation. Most of our members are students and professionals as well. So we organize events and programs that support them to encourage them to innovate. Of course, through impactful programs that we organize here. Recently, we organized a program that was very well received here in Glasgow. We had a mentorship and career workshop for young people. We believe that this particular area, we have a lot of our people living there, and is classified as educationally disadvantaged. So we are focused on supporting this group of people to encourage them to take up STEM subjects. I know that STEM is a very important priority for UK economy. In fact, everywhere, everything about STEM, most governments is speaking about STEM. And for us, it's one of our priorities. We have created a collaboration with the African Challenge Scotland and other African groups and non-Africans as well. I will be able to support them as we progress. So I talked about the big thing we are planning. We have a conference that's coming up in July. We're working with Glasgow Cardinal University, IEEE chapter, and Strathclyde University, Nigerian Society. We focused on this group because we believe that most of our members, apart from professionals, are students, and we believe that this sort of event will be able to create opportunities for them to network, opportunity for them to also speak with some of our people who are experienced here. We also have other add-ons that are part of the conference, like we're hoping to have a technical visit to some facilities here that will be of very, very interest to some of our members. So I'll be speaking about this at the end of this presentation, so I will speak much on this conference. We are also expecting call for abstracts. So if you have any papers or presentation that you would like to share, something interesting that you're working on, I have a lot of PhD students who are actively calling and requesting for a slot for abstract to present during the conference. We are happy to do that, but please feel free to reach out to us. We are also receiving abstract from Nigeria as well. We are also reaching out to companies, government agencies to support us in any way possible. We are looking for a way to collaborate and to grow this. And just to show you, in case you've not seen that before, this is our website. It will be happening here, a very new infrastructure at Strathclyde University. Registration is very simple. Feel free. This link will be shared on the chat section. try to go through and see if you'll be able to join us here in Glasgow in July. So straight away, I will not waste much of our time. I will go to the technical session, and I will invite the technical secretaries. We have Engineer Segun Olailoye, who is here to anchor this event. Segun is a highly experienced chartered engineer here with over 80 years of demonstrated history of successful projects in design and installation of building electrical services. He's also the director and lead engineer of Lawrence's Global Services Limited UK. So Engineer Segun, I'll hand over to you to introduce our speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the brief introduction. So I want to use this opportunity to thank everyone who has, found the time to join us today. Today promises to be an interesting one. We're looking at a subject or a topic that touches on every one of us. And it's nice to have somebody who is on the inside that can give us, a very reliable and good information. And I believe that we will take one or two things away from this technical webinar today. So without wasting more time, I will go ahead and introduce our speaker, and he will then come on and give his presentation. So our speaker today is Daniel Roy Bako, and he's an energy professional and a sustainability driver in NNPC. His 2 decades of experience in the energy industry cuts across management of development, construction and operation of power plants, gas plants, and oil production stations, as well as business architecture and business process development and optimization. His industry accomplishments includes the following. He managed an energy asset portfolio with electricity generation capacity of 1,420 megawatts, gas production of 2 billion standard cubic feet per day, and oil production of 250,000 barrels per day. He managed the conceptualization and delivery of Kolo Creek to Soku project, a joint venture with Shell, which delivers 400 million standard cubic feet per day of gas to Nigeria and LNG. He managed the conceptualization and delivery of Opai Phase 2 project, another joint venture with Ajib, which expanded capacity of Opai power plant from 480 megawatts to 780 megawatts. He managed business architecture redesign for NNPC upstream business units, co-lead the process for obtaining 2 ISO management system certification for NNPC upstream investment management service. He leads the program management office for the Nigerian upstream cost optimization program, a joint industry effort by NNPC, the multinational energy companies, and indigenous Nigerian energy companies. He has a bachelor's degree in electrical electronics engineering from Abubakar Tafawa Balewa University. He's got a master's degree in applied instrumentation and control from Glasgow Caledonian University. He's got the credential of reading from the Harvard Business School, Emerging Leaders Certification from London Business School. He is a certified project management professional and a beneficiary of several professional development programs on energy facility design and operation, process and control and optimization, data analysis, lean business systems, value chain analysis, change management, international law, and leadership. His work in NNPC affords him the platform to positively impact about 200 million Nigerians. His passion for people development makes him volunteer as a learning facilitator within and outside NNPC on several areas like energy value chain, energy commercial frameworks, process instrumentation, decision quality, project management, and contract management. He coaches and mentors several professionals on mentorship platform provided by NNPC, Glasgow Caledonian University, and civil society groups like Young African Leadership Initiatives. His current day job makes him responsible for the development and implementation of sustainability framework for the Nigerian upstream industry. And incidentally, today is his birthday. So kindly join me and welcome Daniel Roy Bako for his presentation. Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday, Engineer Roy.
Thank you very much. I don't know what to say. My boss, Oga Shegun, just yes, pulled the rug from under my feet. But thank you very much for the glowing remarks. And thank you very much, everyone, for having me. Thank you for the birthday wishes as well. I truly appreciate this. Thanks to the NSC Glasgow branch for this privileged opportunity to share some of thoughts put together with respect to the subject we're looking at, which is whether or not we can rely on gas as a sustainable source of energy, especially given the current global sentiment around sustainability, of which energy companies are, in the crossfires. I want to use this opportunity to appreciate the president of the branch, the ESCOs of the branch, and all the members, because truly one must not take opportunities like this for granted. I appreciate this. Right. So, in the interest of time, I want to quickly delve into the thoughts that we put together for the purpose of this knowledge sharing. Please confirm that my screen is visible and that I'm audible.
You're audible.
Perfect. Yes.
All right.
Happy birthday.
Okay. So let me know if you can see one scary picture. Can you see one scary picture?
Not yet. Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah. Just try to share again.
So I guess there's some latency issues. Just bear with us. I'm actually beaming from Lagos. Okay, so has the slide moved?
No, maybe you could try sharing again. That would
Okay,
that
so
tries maybe.
let me stop sharing and then start again.
Yes, that's fine. We can see your screen now.
All right, and you can see the scary picture I was talking about, right?
Yes, we can see it. Yeah.
Okay, so this is more or less, will I call it a satire? It's actually a cartoon depiction in a magazine back in 1906 of the then US President Theodore Roosevelt. So for those of you who are familiar with Greek mythology, you may recognize this illustration of Hercules, baby Hercules actually, fighting one of those monsters, mythical monsters he was, said to have fought even as an infant. So the president was depicted as baby Hercules, and the monster is depicted as some two gentlemen who were at the then the key decision makers within the then Standard Oil Group. And I'm sure most of us will remember Standard Oil. Standard Oil is the progenitor of what I would call the Seven Sisters. It's a long story actually, but it's a very beautiful story about energy, evolution, about monopoly, about government, public sector versus private sector. There's so many perspectives to this story. But what the magazine was basically trying to show then was that the government, if you will, headed by President Roosevelt, was fighting a monster, the monster being this corporate energy giant, which was an oil giant back then. If I fast forward the story, you realize that eventually the government was able to enact a law called the Sherman Antitrust Law, which they used to break up that company into 34, I believe, different pieces. Although those 34 different pieces eventually somehow, morphed up into what in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s was referred to as the Seven Sisters, companies like Mobil, Exxon. So Mobil, I believe, was Standard Oil of New York, and then Exxon was the Standard Oil of New Jersey. Chevron was the Standard Oil of California, and on and on and on and on and on. Yeah, but why I decided to open with this is to say today there is that conversation, especially in light of sustainability, where the energy companies, especially national oil companies, and of course, NNPC is a national oil company. I work for NNPC, as was earlier stated. Is depicted as these monsters that need to be tamed before they destroy the world, simply because of sustainability concerns. Right. So I'm hoping that by the end of this discussion, hopefully we'll be able to maybe shed a few light into some of those dichotomies. But first off, just some shall I say disclosures to say that the views here are simply based on my experience, but mainly based on the learning that I have learned within my journey in the industry, about 2 decades worth of journey in the industry. So it reflects a lot of ideas, that I have come to subscribe to as a person. So it's nothing more than that, and it's just for knowledge sharing. The slides that I'm going to use to manage my content has been organized into basically 4 broad categories, and these are the categories that I am currently showing. So we'll look at what I'll call natural gas 101, just some fundamentals. Then we'll look at what the role of gas is in the global energy mix. We'll look at a little bit on the natural gas value chain, and then we'll look at the issues for Nigeria, which is the main cross of what I thought we should share. So there's a few definitions that I have on this slide, and these are just largely SPE definitions, that's Society of Petroleum Engineers, just to ensure that we're on the same page. When we talk about natural gas, obviously we're referring to portion of petroleum that exists either in gaseous phase or in its solution ground reservoirs, which of course, when exposed to atmospheric conditions in terms of pressure and temperature, become gaseous. And we have what we call the associated gas, which is basically those that are dissolved or coexisting with oil. And then we have the non-associated gas, which are those that are mainly gaseous, even in the subsurface reservoirs. Right, there's just something around what we mean when we say resource and reserves. But basically, you may hear from time to time proved, proven, and probable, or you hear 1P, 2P, or 3P. It's just a reflection of how much uncertainty there is in estimating the results. Bear in mind that the natural gas reserves, nobody has gone there to see what it looks like. So nobody has gone there to measure it. So it's not a game of exact science, if you will. It's more or less a game of statistical analysis and probabilistic and stochastic review. So there's a lot of uncertainty involved. So when we say we have reserves of a particular figure, if we say it's 1P, it means that the level of uncertainty is very narrow. So we are pretty confident, just maybe 10% uncertainty. But if we say it's 2P, then we are talking about 50-50 situation. We could be right, we could be wrong. And if you say it's 3P, it means really we can't say. We have very high level of uncertainty, up to 90%, right? And so the term reserves generally refer to what we can commercially, it's key to underline that word, commercially recover. And what are the selling points for gas? Yes, what are those things that makes gas attractive? First and foremost, it has a higher energy content, and you will see why this is very, very key as we go along in our discussions. Compared to oil or coal, that's within the fossil fuel family, gas actually has the higher energy density. Also, compared to those same fossil fuels, gas has a lesser carbon footprint. You only generate 1.2 moles of CO2 averagely from converting natural gas to energy in terms of million joules. When you compare that to coal, it's almost half what you generate compared to coal, right? It has good efficiency. You can easily generate with a volume of atmospheric conditions, or at standard conditions rather, not at atmospheric, at standard conditions, you can easily generate up to 243 million calories from 1 million standard cubic feet of gas, which is the basic unit or the basic field unit that is used. Of course, if I go with the SI system, because I know there are some who are maybe biased more to the academia, that will be, I don't have the number in terms of the standard cubic meters, but there's a conversion. It is a very straightforward conversion, so it's not so difficult, right? And of course, we have a lot of important derivatives, such as hydrogen and methanol, in addition to the energy that we get. And then the technology for processing it is quite mature. Right. In terms of the classification, and this is important because you will hear this from time to time, when we talk about LNG, what do we mean? Or when we talk about LPG, LNG being liquefied natural gas, LPG being liquefied petroleum gas. When we say condensate, what do we mean? Or when we say natural gas liquids, what do we mean? So the best way to relate to that is think of the basic alkenes, right? So natural gas is basically a predominantly hydrocarbon with maybe some other impurities like carbons, like CO2, like H2S. You may even have trace elements like mercury and the rest of them. But it's predominantly hydrocarbon. And where you have just one carbon atom, right, in that hydrocarbon structure, it's methane. So our LNG comprises mainly of methane and a little bit of ethane. Then LPG comprises mainly of propane or butane. The mixture differs from country to country based on regulations. And then when we say condensate, we're basically referring to pentane and some of its isotopes. So that's just basically what it is. And in terms of measurement, you can measure it in terms of let me say the heat content and as well as volume. So when you come to the heat content, you are talking about the calorific value basically, where you have maybe up to 95% of methane, you can call it lean. So when you hear lean gas, the methane content is as high as 95%. You may have rich gas. Rich gas simply means that you have more of the lower ends, the heavier carbon atoms, or carbon molecules rather. And then, of course, you measure in terms of sulfur content too. So when we say sweet or sour, 5% sulfur content. And then when we say it's dry or wet, we're talking about how much parts per million in terms of water, that's per million by volume that you have. And you have up to, when you have less than 7 pounds per million standard cubic feet, you say it's dry. And if you have more than that, you say it's wet. Okay, you can measure gas in terms of energy content, which obviously there are many units, British thermal units being one, joules, another, calories, and the rest of them. And then you can also measure it in terms of volumetrics. The field units in most regions you hear is SCOF. SCOF is just, a way of saying standard cubic feet, that's just what it is. Or you can have standard cubic meters if you're going by the SI units. And you can also have barrel of oil equivalent, where you just compare how much energy you get out of volume you're looking at compared to the energy you get out of 1 barrel of oil. You can have prefixes like M. These are just, M stands for 1,000, MM stands for 1 million, and B stands for billion, and on and on. Okay, so the other thing is we're looking at the availability of gas today across the world. And the reality is that natural gas is so abundant. So today we are talking about the one that is associated with oil, or exists as a standalone in conventional reservoirs, right? But in reality, we have so much of it in the form of gas hydrates, okay? And that's what you see. And of course, you have some of it in form of shale gas. So the conventional gas is just slightly more than maybe like about 1.5 times the volume of shale gas that has so far been discovered. But it's actually 21 times less than the size of the gas trapped in hydrates, which we call gas hydrates, right? However, those gas hydrates are mainly, they are not everywhere. They are mainly in high temperature regions, which excludes the tropics where we are. And getting to them requires lots of effort when it comes to technology. It's not cheap, okay? So that's why we are not talking about them. Why is that important? Because if tomorrow the technological barrier for accessing those gas hydrates, is breached, and the technological and economic barrier, and we're able to find that it's cheaper to produce gas from gas hydrates, you might see that the conversation around energy globally will change, because the countries that are in these regions, the countries that sit on it, and the countries that don't sit on it. So it will change the face of global politics. But just so you know that we have so much of this stuff, we will not finish using it, I believe, in several lifetimes over. Okay, and obviously we can generate electricity from it. Today it constitutes about 24% of our global energy in terms of source. However, depending on what happens in the next maybe 2 decades or 3 decades, it could go up to 32%. Okay. It's also very important for agriculture because we can source, the inputs for fertilizer from it. It's important for industry because it's the cheapest source of methanol, which is a key solvent, for most industrial processes. And of course, we're talking about blue hydrogen. So what is blue hydrogen? Blue hydrogen is simply hydrogen that you get from natural gas, which you are able to compensate for the carbon footprint in extracting it from natural gas. So as it stands today, the hydrogen market globally, 95% of it comes from natural gas, and that is called gray hydrogen. But if you're able to add something like carbon capture, utilization, and storage to your gas, to your hydrogen extraction from natural gas, you can call that blue hydrogen, which is seen as a more, shall I say, sustainable fuel, or a transition fuel mainly. Right, so gas is that very, very important. And the reality is that our consumption of energy on a per capita basis is rising, even as our population is rising. So you can expect a geometric progression in terms of our energy demand. And if we go through history, we see that transition from one energy source to another has always been from, a less dense fuel to a high dense fuel. So we were using wood before, then we moved to coal, then we moved to oil. And it's just logical that we probably should be moving towards gas because, it will just keep in line with, or, it will just be consistent with what has happened historically in terms of energy transition. Okay, but we've also talked about the fact that we probably cannot exhaust it. So if we stop getting gas, it's not because it's not geologically available, it's just that maybe we are moving on to something else. Of course, we know that even though it is relatively a cleaner, fuel source compared to the other fossils, it doesn't mean that it has no impact, no negative impact on the environment. It does. Greenhouse gases, as well as increase in rain acidity, being some of them. But we've made the point that it has a lower carbon footprint. I can also talk about it here in terms of how much grams you generate every time you generate energy from any of these fossil fuels. And you can see that for that of natural gas, it's somewhere about half that of coal, again, which is consistent with what we have talked about earlier. I won't spend time on this, but just to say that as it stands today, conventional natural gas can be found on virtually every continent, unlike the gas hydrates that we talked about earlier. You may be aware of the Gas Exporting Countries Forum. It's just a forum of gas exporters, just to, shall I say, help them work together to face the challenges that they face as suppliers of gas. And they currently control about 62% of global gas reserves and 43% of pipeline exports, as well as 64% of the LNG market. It's similar to OPEC, but it doesn't act as OPEC because they don't attempt to control price through production quotas. Again, the nature of gas is that it is expensive to transport, and so it tends to be a regional thing, unlike oil, which is basically portable. You can easily transport it anywhere, right? And so also you sell it on the basis of long-term supply contracts because that's the easiest way to assure yourself that you can recover the capex, the capital expenditure needed to develop and produce natural gas. Okay, so this is just a slide that shows, let's say, the market share of each of the GECF countries. And you can see that among GECF, Nigeria is number 4, even though in terms of what it actually does by export, it pales in comparison to what numbers 1, 2, and 3 do. Number 1 being Russia, and number 2 being Qatar. Okay, so just a brief summary or overview of what the natural gas value chain looks like before we delve into the crux of the discussion. So typically you find gas in geological traps. Some of the geological traps could be, anticlines, they could be faults, they could be stratigraphic non-conformities or salt domes. And, you drill for them. The drilling and the production is called upstream in terms of sectorization. And then you can process them and transport them and treat them to make them more usable by final consumers. And those activities you carry out there are called the midstream. And then, of course, whatever you do to make it available to the final consumer, whether they're industrial or residential, is called downstream. Okay, so just a bit on the exploration methods. They are not different from how we explore for oil. In fact, I can tell you that the gas, at least within the Nigerian context, any gas that we have discovered, we discovered it while looking for oil. So we're not even looking for gas, we're just looking for oil when we, accidentally stumble across gas. And so the techniques that are used include, geological, satellite imagery, aerial photography, and rest of them, which are called surface techniques. And then, of course, we also have the geophysical techniques, which include, use of gravity maps and seismic surveys. And then once you are able to identify prospects, of course, you typically carry out exploratory drilling, the objective being to define the nature of the well fluids. Now, the prospects you will see are basically the structures that are likely to house your hydrocarbons. And we've talked about them, things like anticlines, like faults, salt domes, and the rest of them. So when you see them underneath the surface, basically they are telling you that, okay, we have a house here. The analogy I would use is, let's say you are taking an overflight through Lagos and you can see houses, but you don't know if those houses you see have people inside, right? So it's when you carry out exploratory drilling that you now establish whether there are people inside. And so that's basically, in a nutshell, what exploratory drilling is all about. So you obtain preliminary data on the reservoir, the nature of and characteristics of the fluid in place. Is it predominantly oil or gas? And things like that. And the outcome determines whether you will need to further appraise that reservoir, which means you will carry out appraisal drilling. And again, using my analogy of houses and people, maybe now you've established that there are people in the house, so you want to know how many are they, what quality of human beings are you dealing with, and what can you do with them. So that's why you carry out appraisal drilling, to refine or complete data from the exploratory phase, determine the boundaries, and you basically want to know whether you are good to go as far as commercial production is concerned. And if you're good to go, you carry out what is called development drilling, where you bring the well to the on stream, and then you want to drain that reservoir optimally, okay? And you will typically carry out, when you're doing development drilling, you could drill a well to be either a production well, which is just to optimize how much you drain of the reservoir, well, which you may use sometimes to maintain reservoir pressure by injecting maybe something like water or compressed gas, or even an observation well, just to use it to monitor the behavior of the reservoir. Observation wells are not very, very common, but they do exist. They are rare though. And then, of course, you may hear terms like completion. And what are completion activities? They are just activities undertaken after drilling, just to make sure that you can easily produce from the well. And we have a typical depiction of, what a well completion actually looks like. Okay, so once you are able to get that gas to the surface, the next thing you will do, obviously, is to process it. Okay, and there are many, we did talk about in the selling points of gas, we said that the technologies used to process gas are well matured and well understood. So these are some of it, and I'm sure that there are things that are common or familiar to most engineers. Separation techniques, you could be doing separation techniques, and you do that to maybe separate, different phases, oil from gas, sometimes solids from liquids. And you can also do low temperature separation, which is a way of, separating the fractions, and you find that applied in LNG extraction especially. And of course, you can do fractionation. You can do dehydration, There are so many schemes of dehydrating, either by absorption, by adsorption, or by velocity. You can also compress, just to ensure that you give that gas some energy so that it can flow over an intended or expected distance. And then you can also compress them into CNGs, which is compressed natural gas, which you can maybe bottle up and transport where necessary. Okay, you can also do some combination reactions, such as polymerization. I don't know if you've heard of gas to liquids, but basically what it does is you take all those methane molecules and you polymerize them so that you get the heavier hydrocarbons, which will basically be in your liquid phase. And so you can either, process it into diesel or, some other gas to liquid component. And then, of course, you have liquefaction, which is basically dropping the temperature to the point where virtually all your components can become liquids, and then you can easily separate them. And if you're able to keep, for instance, the methane in liquid form, you can transport it from one end to another, one end of the world to another, where you can regasify it and use it for energy. Of course, you will have some processes that are basically geared towards safety and reducing the negative environmental impact of your activity, such as gas flaring, such as sulfur recovery and removal, or mercury removal. So a typical gas production system, therefore, involves all the things you will do to ensure that that gas flows from the reservoir and is delivered to the pipeline, to the customer through most likely a pipeline. Now, it doesn't matter if that pipeline is a huge bore pipeline, connecting two geographical regions together, or a little pipeline in the engine of your car or in the turbines. The point is you need to get it to the point where you can actually do the energy conversion to extract whatever you need to extract out of it. So obviously we can consume gas in so many forms, either as fuel or to generate electricity, or to generate heating, especially for those of you in Glasgow and the rest of the more temperate regions compared to us. And of course, you can use it as industrial feed. I did mention things like methanol, fertilizer, and petrochemicals, plastics. So many uses of gas, right? So let's just switch gears now and look at a few things around new energies and sustainability. Now, if we're going to talk about sustainability, I thought we just have a few definitions, just again to ensure we're on the same page. So there's a dictionary definition of sustainability, which basically talks about ability to maintain something at a particular rate or level. There is what I would call the political definition, which is, best captured by the UK's Parliament's definition of sustainability as a long-term maintenance and enhancement of human well-being within finite planetary resources. So the whole idea is to ensure that these resources that are finite, we don't finish them and deprive future generations, and which informs the United Nations, main definition, which they use. So this definition was developed by the Brundtland Commission. The Brundtland Commission was established, I believe, in 1983 or so. Okay, so let me not go in there. But the point is that this commission came up with this definition around what sustainability is, and the United Nations has basically adopted it. So in most UN documents, when you see sustainability, this is the definition you see. It is meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So it means that human beings or humanity is at the center of sustainability. We want to ensure that when we say humanity, not just those of us who are currently alive, but those generations that will come eons after us, want to ensure that they are able to enjoy the resources that are available for us today. So we just have to sustain them, right? There are 17 Sustainable Development Goals that the United Nations General Assembly passed or adopted as a general resolution back in 2015. And they range the whole gamut from ending poverty, hunger, good health, quality education, gender equality, clean water, affordable and accessible energy, decent work and economic growth, industry, other forms of inequality, sustainable cities, how we live, and how we produce and consume. So responsible consumption and production. Of course, climate action and conservation of the ecosystem, whether it is life below water or life on land. as well as things around peace, justice, and strong institutions, and ensuring that there is global partnership to deliver these sustainable development goals. So anywhere you hear sustainability, best way to think about it is think about the sustainable development goals, because that's what sustainable efforts are geared towards. And in the United Nations SDG framework, these 17 goals actually have 169 KPIs that are used to measure progress towards achieving them, right? And every company, every country, every organization, every individual that is working towards sustainability is actually being guided by this. Another way to look at it is in terms of the different pillars, that we kind of use to group all these efforts. And mainly 3 pillars that are used everywhere: the social, environmental, and the economic. So we say that the convergence of all 3 is what is required to achieve sustainability. However, there are different ways that people call these pillars. Some call it PPP, planet, people, and profit. And some use the term ESG, which is environment, social, and governance. But whatever they call it, they are talking about the same thing. And it's also common practice for companies to form their own pillars. So I'll tell you for free, in my own organization, that's in NNPC, we actually have 4 pillars, and we call it planet, people, purpose, and perception. I won't go into that so that I don't use up so much time. Yes, how does that impact us? Okay, if you look at this map, it's just showing the countries that are most at risk in terms of global change vulnerability. And you see that Africa is actually the continent that is most at risk, especially countries within the sub-Saharan African region, which includes ours, right? So if we have climate change that results into a 1.5 degrees average temperature rise globally, okay, it will have so many negative impact on Africa and on us. It will threaten our water system, it will threaten our food security, it will threaten our health and well-being, our infrastructure investment, our economic prosperity, right? Rain-fed agriculture, for instance, which constitutes 95% of our agriculture, will suffer as a result of any further deterioration in terms of our climate. And so the small gains that we have made so far as a continent, we are at the risk of losing them. That's pretty much what the AFDB has also arrived at in terms of conclusion climate change. And the statistics show that Africa is actually, unfortunately, not a contributor to this situation, right? The big contributors are, and you have to look at, when you say contribution, you're not talking about what they are doing today, but you have to look at what they have done from the onset of the industrial era. And we're talking about as far back as the early 1800s till today, right? And you see that, our contribution as Africa as a whole, we are just somewhere almost almost negligible. I think 3 to 4% is the figure that is being touted all around. And Nigeria's contribution of that is even much bigger. We are actually below the average contribution of Africa. And if you look at Nigeria, what are those activities we do that currently drive our impact on the climate? There are things we do around power, around transport, around oil and gas, around cooking, and around industry. And yes, you may hear things from time to time, and we tend to get vilified, especially in the oil and gas energy sector. But the reality is that we are not the largest contributor. The largest contributor to this, within even the Nigerian context, is actually cement, which is construction, which is for housing that we all use. So it's mainly cement and fertilizer before you even get to us. When you put the contribution of cement alone, I believe the whole of Nigeria's contribution is somewhere in the region of, I think, 27 or so. 27 or so. I'm trying to remember the actual unit, whether it's million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. And about out of that, 75% of that is driven by cement. Okay, so the contribution of oil is actually, small. So if you look at our energy sector generally, most of our energy sources, especially on grid, is actually from very low carbon intensive sources. So you are aware that we use solar, right? Sorry, we use hydro and we use natural gas. Those are basically our energy sources. We don't use coal and we don't use oil, or whether it is low profile oil or high profile oil to generate electricity. So it means that when you compare our grid to most countries in the world, we actually have one of the least carbon intensive grids, right? However, in terms of sourcing energy, where does our carbon footprint come from? The most of it, apart from the cement that is around biomass, because we know that most of our people in the village use wood and charcoal. And unfortunately, because of the rising prices of energy these days, even within our urban centers, we are beginning to see that people are beginning to resort to using charcoal. So this is a key concern, right? I don't know if you are aware of this gentleman whose picture I'm showing here. I believe his name is Malcolm Brinded. He was a one-time executive vice president for Shell for their upstream business. And he sits on boards of many companies, including, I believe, the British Railway, National Railway, I believe it's called. Anyway, he made this statement. He said that companies that are not interested in sustainable development issues will not survive long. And indeed, long-term sustainability of a business will be determined largely by how much people view its ESG performance. This has been proven by a study that was carried out last year, I believe sometime around February, by McKinsey and Nielsen IQ, who basically said that over the prior 5 years, companies that are making ESG-related claims with respect to their products are seeing a 28% cumulative growth, in their patronage compared to companies that don't. And also, their global survey showed that 81% of consumers will always consider sustainability, as a yardstick for choosing what brands to buy. Now, another concept when we're talking about sustainability, okay, just a moment, let me see how well we're doing with time. Okay, I believe I have about 10 more minutes. Another concept when we're talking about sustainability is the energy trilemma. And what is the energy trilemma? It's about ensuring, balance between sustainability, affordability, and security. Remember, we said sustainability is all about humanity. So there's no point you're doing something for humanity if, you are killing the current generation of humans because you want to save future generations. It's the current generation that will, give back to the future generations, if you know what I mean. So you have to always ensure that you have a balance between three things, which is what we call the energy trilemma. So one is sustainability, ensure that you decarbonize your energy source. The other is security. Now, energy security is very, very important. It's at the heart of global politics. Some of you may be aware how BP, British Petroleum, came into being, okay? I think it was around 1914 or so when I think the Shah of Iran then, had a partnership with one British businessman, and they called it I think Anglo-Persian Energy Company or something like that. And over time, because of World War I and World War II effort, the Royal Navy needed to secure supply of diesel and generally oil, to prosecute the war. And so what they decided to do was to take a strategic interest into this Anglo-Persian oil company. So they bought a minority stake, which they grew to a point until, I think in the early, sometime in either 40s, 50s, or 60s, I can't remember, they now renamed that company to British Petroleum. That's what we call BP. I started off with that monster thingy around Standard Oil. Why was America interested in that? Because at that point in time, Standard Oil not only controlled and dominated the energy supply scape in US, but even the railway. The railway, it dominated, I think it owned almost 90% of the existing rail in the US. So the government just realized that if we're not careful, you will have one company calling the shots and we can't do nothing about it. So energy security is very, very important for countries and is at the core of their politics, right? And then, of course, affordability, ensuring that people can afford it. So you have what is called the World Energy Council, and they actually track what they call the World Energy Trilemma Index. And their latest one, which they published late, I think last year, with respect to 2022, shows that Sweden is the best in terms of energy trilemma. UK and Canada actually joined in the fourth place, and then Nigeria is number 84 out of 125. So that tells you that we have a lot to do in order to get to that point where our energy trilemma looks. So that report basically makes the case for what is called a just energy transition. And what just energy transition says is look, you have to take the reality of every country into consideration before you talk about transiting from one form of energy to the other. And we'll come to what that means to Nigeria shortly. But the whole idea is that we also have to achieve energy trilemma as a country, right? And then this brings us to the issue of new energies. So new energies basically refer to renewable. Most of them are renewable, but they refer to energies that have a less carbon footprint. And basically, you're talking about the geothermal, hydroelectric, solar, wind, tidal, biofuels, hydrogen, nuclear. So nuclear is one of those ones that is controversial, but let's just leave it there because there's so much there's so much diversity in terms of the view on whether or not nuclear should be regarded as a clean energy. But that's what we have. And most of them, like we said, are renewable. Of course, nuclear is not renewable. But this shows you how much, I mentioned earlier that gas today, occupies somewhere around 22 to 24% in terms of the global energy mix. But you can see that the other energy sources are beginning to, let me see, make an inroad. If I showed you the energy picture 10 years ago, you'll have seen that the whole of these other renewable energies was less than, I believe, less than 5%. But today you see that they are getting bigger and bigger. Coal is still a dominant energy source, but watch out for gas, okay? Now we come to the Nigerian irony. And I think for me, this is the crux of the matter. I have 5 minutes, so I think that's enough time. So we have implemented as a country several national programs and regulations to reduce emissions. And it's good we remind ourselves of that we have not been done baby in this business, okay? Our flaring used to be over 90% of what we produced about 2 decades ago. Today, it's just a single digit. So no matter what you hear, you may hear them saying Nigeria is a big flare or whatever. They are probably looking at data of 20 years ago because that is, some of these things, some of these narratives in the media just linger a lot longer than the facts will support them. But as of today, we are flaring, I think the national average is somewhere around 8% or so. Within the NNPC portfolio, I know it's somewhere around 4 or 5%. Okay, so we are doing just single digits. We have declared this current decade, starting from 2021 to 2030, as the decade of gas, so that we can focus on gas as our own, transition for. Why? Because we are blessed with this thing, as you will see subsequently. Of course, we passed the Petroleum Industry Act, which provided a little bit of enhanced conditions for gas development and for sustainability, environmental management, and things like that. We are committed to, achieving carbon neutrality as a country by 2060. We made this promise at COP26, which coincidentally took place in Glasgow. Need to emphasize that. And then our nationally determined contributions, our target is 20% unconditional reduction in terms of our carbon footprint and 47% conditional. So 20% unconditional means whether we get anybody's support or not, things we are doing will ensure that we reduce by 20%. But if we get some funding support that we said we needed, we can probably do up to 47%. We also passed a Climate Change Act, which has some specific and stringent provisions with respect to how we negatively impact the climate. And we also have methane guidelines today, targeting reduction of 61% in greenhouse gas emission. And we are one of those countries that does this. Now, when you say things like this about Nigeria, some people will say Nawash, and that's why I titled this slide Nawash. But this is what, independent, should I say, independent assessment of what we are doing and what we are committed to doing with respect to climate change as a country. And this is what it says. It says that our plan is almost sufficient. And this is much, much better than others because the scale they use to rank is either critically insufficient, highly insufficient, almost sufficient, or 1.5 degrees Celsius compatible. Very few countries have this 1.5 degrees Celsius compatible. I can't think of any off the top of my head right now. And most countries are either in the highly insufficient or critically insufficient cadre. So we are in the almost sufficient cadre, according to Climate Action Tracker. And I think this is something we need to tell ourselves. Now, what does this mean for us? Look at our population. This is our population by age group in Nigeria. The takeaway here is that we're a country of about 230 million people by most estimates, and our median age is 17 years. So we have a young population that is growing. Young people need energy. Unfortunately, our energy consumption is 0.14 megawatt hour per person. Okay, if you take our energy and divide it across our population, that's what you get. And this is just 0.04 times the global average. So the global average energy consumption per person is 3.2 megawatt hour, but we are at 0.14. I don't know how abysmal, if there's any adjective other than abysmal, that's what we should use to compare ourselves. Now, look at a country like Japan. Japan, the interesting thing is there are about 124 million of them, but they are an aging population. Their median age is 48 years. So old people don't really need much energy, but see their consumption is 7.5 megawatt hour per person. Okay, and of course, this is more than 2.3 times the global average, which means, they're not doing badly. So what the Nigerian irony is that a country like Nigeria, young population, who actually need energy to do, to go about doing their activities. We don't have that energy. And those who you probably will argue don't need energy have this energy in abundance. So this is an irony and an anomaly, right? Which brings us to the issue about gas. Now, I won't dwell so much on this, just to mention that in virtually most scenarios that the World Energy Council used to analyze or predict gas usage in the future, energy usage rather, gas always plays a very, very key role. So look at the situation today in terms of our average percentage of houses or households that have access to energy. You will see that in some states like Kwara and the rest of them, you have maybe more than 80% having access to energy. But if you go to where I'm from, which is Gombe State, you see that maybe we are somewhere around 48.1%. And then if you go to the neighboring state to mine, like Yobe, you see that only 18% of households have access to energy. So this is just to tell you, it just doesn't make sense. And this is where you have concentration of young people. If you look at our, population data, right? And the irony is that we are sitting in a place that has a lot of gas. Today, we have discovered 210 TCF of gas accidentally. And there are speculations that we may be sitting on more than 600 TCF of gas. And 1 TCF of gas can generate at least 99.7 million megawatt hour of energy. So what stops us from generating this gas, you may ask? And in fact, if we can use the whole what we have, the whole 210 TCF, how much energy can we get? I can tell you for free that at the global average, we will get energy for 33 years, given our population of about 196. Of course, I'm discounting, let's say babies and very old people, things like that. But if we were to go with Japan's consumption rate, we'll probably just use it up in 15 years. However, if we were to continue what we are doing at the rate at which we are doing, this thing will be there for the next 712 years. So this is the Nigerian irony. And this is why we need to look into Nigeria's eyes and ask ourselves, do we see a problem or do we see an opportunity? I'm rounding up in the next 2 minutes. I know I've short my time by two or 3 minutes, but this is my conclusion. I conclude by comparing us to South Africa, okay? If you compare in terms of electricity, our electricity consumption is just about 3.5% that of South Africa. If you compare in terms of fertilizer application to our agriculture, our usage is just 20% compared to that of South Africa. Meanwhile, we have a land that is nitrogen deficient, okay? If you compare us in terms of industry also, our GDP contribution from manufacturing is less than half that of South Africa, okay? And then if you look at what we are doing with respect to blue hydrogen, which is talking about sustainability, South Africa is already building capacity to supply Japan and Europe with blue hydrogen. And we are not even supplying the gray hydrogen as of today. So this again are some of the ironies about us when it comes to energy. Now, our GDP per capita and poverty head count at 7% and 200% respectively that of South Africa. It means that we have more poor people, twice more poor people than South Africa has in terms of ratio of population, and yet our contributors to economic prosperity are about about 37% of the contributors by, again, ratio of population to South Africa. So that tells you that it's either we have a problem or we have an opportunity. And there are just some few areas where maybe we can think of what we can do. National Gas Flare Commercialization Program is ongoing. CNG commercialization is ongoing, and there's an auto gas initiative by the government. And so the question is, what are the things militating or preventing us from leveraging all this gas to solve our energy? These are some of the problems. There are economic problems like the regulated pricing that we have. People are not just paying for the gas. We have infrastructure deficit in terms of conveying the gas to people. And those infrastructure we have are not always available. And when they are available, they are not always effective. We just have a lot of supply challenges. And so the challenge is, which one of these issues can we as individuals or collectively as a group help Nigeria to tackle, so that this our irony that we've described today, it becomes a thing of the past. And this concludes my knowledge sharing on this issue. Thank you very much once again for the opportunity. And I will like to stop here and stand by for any questions or comments or discussions as we guided by the leadership of the NSE Glasgow branch. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Engineer Dan. This is a fantastic one. This is, you can hear some claps at the background. This is an interesting one. This is also revealing. What do we see? Do we see problems? Do we see opportunities? It's left to all of us. So it's Q&A time. We will take some questions. You can signify by show of hands, or you can type your questions in the comments and we can take it. We've got limited time. We'll take questions for like 10 minutes. So if you have any questions, please signify by raising up your hand or you type it in the queue. So we've got one from Sandra. Sandra, can you please unmute yourself and ask your question?
Thank you very much, Engineer Shegun. Happy birthday, Engineer Dan. Nice to have you on the session today. Quite insightful. I've picked a lot of things. I'll just go straight to the point. First of all, I have an issue with the reliability of data that we have in Nigeria. And this is not because of the data collected at maybe head offices, but from the grassroots, from the typist, from the secretary, from the field engineer or field worker that is collecting the data. So eventually we have, I'll say, inaccurate data in our databases that is nationally available. So how can we depend on this data, to make decisions? And next question is, so I know that gas is a transition fuel and it has issues around risks, price volatility, and risk and investments into the future. I know the International Energy Agency has mentioned that gas investment needs to be halved by 2030. And then a lot of companies and lending organizations will be kind of hesitant to issue loans or fund any new investment in oil and gas related projects. So Nigeria has a lot of gas reserves, as you've mentioned, but going back to what you said from the beginning, Nigeria was not a contributor to all these emissions that we're suffering from. And of course, we are one of the likely countries to be highly impacted by the effect of climate change. And so now we have that impact we are suffering from, and then restrictions. We cannot use all our gas or oil resources that we want to use. So we have to make these NDCs to reduce our emissions. So going forward, we are definitely off track 1.5 degrees, even 2 degrees by 2030 or 2050. What is Nigeria looking into, and like NNPC in particular, looking into so diversifying and reducing dependency on gas products, because gas is a transition fuel, and in the near future, there might be more sanctions when we begin to see the temperatures reaching tipping points, and then more sanctions, more restrictions on countries to urgently reduce the emissions of usage of gas or oil-related or fossil fuels. Is Nigeria rightly positioned to invest, say, in renewables like solar? We have abundant solar. I think our solar reserves can supply all the electricity needs in the country. So is Nigeria really positioned to adjust, make drastic adjustment if need be? Or are we just relying on, oh, okay, we have so much reserves? How sure are we in the future, in the next 10 years, that we'll be allowed to explore and exploit all these reserves that we have? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Engineer Sandra. So Engineer Dan, if you can quickly just answer that question. We have a lot of hands raised. Do we still have Engineer Dan here?
Or you want me to answer now, or?
Yeah, you can just answer,
right.
and I'll take the other ones, yeah.
All right, okay. Thank you very much, Sandra, and thanks for the birthday wishes. I really appreciate that. So the first issue you raise is around data quality from Nigeria. It's a challenge, to be fair. So it's a very, very valid observation. I think until we strengthen our data collection infrastructure, and how do we strengthen that? For me, I am passionate about education, about public education as a panacea to most of our issues that we suffer in Nigeria. If people don't appreciate the, should I say, the value of ensuring high quality data, that they generate high quality data, and that, so I studied applied instrumentation and control in Glasgow, Kaduna University, as was mentioned earlier. And one of the first things I remember my professor told me was, look, it is what it is. Like when you are measuring or gathering data, it is what it is. Don't try to forge it or, make it look different. It is what it is. And you just work with it. And that's the fundamental, about measurement. You want to measure it as it is. And until people appreciate that, it's going to be difficult. So in the interim, the best you can do is, use other, shall I say, data quality enhancement techniques that you can use to work with any data you get out of Nigeria. And of course, there's a lot of statistics methods that you can use to test quality of data. I won't go into that. I believe we may have people who are much more qualified to discuss that. With respect to the second issue, so first off, as we discussed earlier, our contribution historically till today as Africa to this global climate warming thing is between 3 to 4%, depending on whose data you are looking at. But there's nobody that has projected that we have contributed more than 4%. So the question is, if you are going to apply Pareto's principle, right, where should you put your effort? Should you put your effort on that place that at best you are saving 3 to 4%? Or should you concentrate to those areas where you can save a huge chunk? So that's the question that we should ask ourselves. Secondly, in the course of our discussion, we also talked about just energy transition, right? And we talked about the energy trilemma. So if you approach it from that perspective, you have to look at what is easy for us to achieve today in terms of solving our energy challenges. And you may say the sun is available and abundant and is everywhere, so we can do solar. And I will agree with you partially. But I would also say that if you look at the life cycle, the total value chain required to put in the infrastructure to harness, solar energy and make it available in the quantum that will make a significant impact on the country, we cannot depend on solar because the impact, the negative impact, both in terms of the economics and the environmentals, is something that, let me say, we have not yet fully appreciated or fully understood. But most especially the economic limit in terms of what it takes to do that kind of mass solar project. You require a lot of space. You also generate more negative environmental impact in the kind of space where you do maybe a massive array of solar panels or things like that. So you can't rely on that. It would be nice to have it in the mix, right? So what we probably need is a mix, but not just to put our eggs in one basket. Now, why are we advancing the use of gas? Because it is readily available. It is all over the place. We are not even looking for this stuff, and we are finding 210 TCF. And we're already in the global conversation as one of the biggest or dominant suppliers, exporters of gas. And people are saying, look, if you guys look for it, you probably have maybe 6 to 7 times what you have currently discovered. So if something is cheaply available to you, doesn't it make sense to, at least in the interim, leverage it as much as you can? Because remember what we said about geological activity not being a factor that will prevent us using this. One day, we might find a better technology to, produce energy cheaper from other sources. And so this opportunity that we have today to use our gas will have been lost. And again, you come back to the Pareto's principle that I mentioned. Even if we say as Nigeria, we're not going to do gas, what impact are we going to make to that 1.5 degrees? Not significant, very, very negligible. And so even all the international agencies have realized the need for that. And I've told you also that the World Energy Council's energy trilemma report shows that we're even doing badly in terms of the energy trilemma. So what I'm trying to say is that there's so much room for us to leverage the one that is readily and cheaply and easily available, while we also think towards the future of how we can contribute to the research and the progress towards making other forms of renewable energy readily available. I don't know if that answers your question, but that would be my thoughts on that. Thanks.
Yeah, I think that's quite I think we'll probably answer that question. Thank you so much. We're pushed for time. I think we've got about 7 minutes to go.
Can I have an opportunity to add to what Dan had said?
If you can do that in 1 minute, 1 minute, please. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think the question, Sandra, you want to be aware that NNPC has an energy company, apart from the gas that we're exploring, and they already have an energy company, renewable energy department as well, that are working on all the other sources of energies apart from gas. That's when you hear about it. That's for the future. I remember you asked a question like that. So NNPC is already putting things in place to work on renewable energy. There's a company working on all those areas. My time is short. I hope I've answered her question, because she was asking what is NNPC doing. NNPC has an energy company with renewable energy programs are working on, not only gas. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Engineer Avera, for that very good information. So just like I said, we're pushed for time. So I will we've got like 6 hands up. We'll see how many we can take within the time. Please, once it's your time, just ask the question, and Engineer Dan will do as much as possible to just answer. So I will take 3 questions at a go, and then you will answer it. So Engineer Ademola Agoro, FNSC, please can you unmute yourself and ask your question? And then Engineer Mary Chukuma will ask a question, and Engineer Fidelis Usman will ask his question, and Engineer Dan can then just answer all of them in one go. Engineer Ademola Agoro, FNSC, please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thank you, my chairman. So thank you, Engineer Dan. I'm actually worried. Thank you for the presentation, but I'm worried about some of the information that you gave us, especially in the areas of Africa. We are not contributing anything to this global warming, and the impact is on us. I want to know, and your answers about what can we do to prevent it. I need you to elaborate more on what can be done to prevent, because the issue, like you are aware, the energy that we are generating, even on gas in Nigeria today, is just about 6,000, just like you rightly put. So we are not really putting anything, but this effect is so strong on us as it's going to affect every aspect of our lives. And another thing I want to ask is that when you talked about the issue of what can we do as engineers, especially how we'll be talking about, I don't know what NNPC is doing on the issue of the research. Maybe they are spending money for the academics and the people in the industry, because most of the issue you talk about solar is a very simple issue. It's just that there's a lot of technology has gone into solar, so the issue of space is not about it now. There are different technology in solar now that we can deploy in Nigeria, but we need the government, the NNPC, to be able to invest in research and development so that we can solve our specific problem. Thank you because of time.
Thank you so much, Engineer Agoro. Engineer Mary Chukuma, please straight to the point because of our time. You can ask your question.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I actually joined with my wife's phone number. Thank you, Dan, for the presentation. I agree with everything, most of the things you said, quite interesting. Well done. My challenge is that you predicted that, or kind of prediction that if we are using these gases, that it will finish in some time in the future. So my concern is now, if we now start investing in the infrastructure to harness this gas, and all of a sudden we run out of it. So what happens? Thank you.
So thank you, sir. Sorry, I didn't catch the name. So Engineer Usman, please straight to the point, ask your question, and then we'll get a response from Engineer Dan.
Okay, good afternoon or good evening all. Thank you so much, Engineer Dan. That was very, very insightful. I appreciate the fact that to all your slides, you added references so that we can go and check all that you've shared with us. Yes, and I want to ask a question about, we're talking about sustainability. My research is based on abandoned oil wells and how to generate electricity out of them. So you've stated that we have, because oil wells and oil and gas wells, basically that's my area. So you stated that we have a reserve, and you predicted that if we're using them at a rate, you predicted the time which will have exhausted them. Are there plans in place for this oil, for the boreholes after their cycle? Is there any plan in place to continue, like the sustainability you talked about? Do we continue there because there's heat that can be extracted from these boreholes? Is there something in place like that that will ensure that you've generated energy from this reserve? You can still generate energy instead of just leaving it fallow and just walking away like most oil companies have done. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Engineer Osman. So, Engineer Dan, can you respond to them as briefly as possible, just because of our time? And then we'll take the last three hands and possibly some in the comments. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And thanks everyone for the questions and for the comments and commendations. So first of all, on the Nigeria's contribution towards decarbonization, that's how I captured it. I shared that 2 decades ago, we were flaring over 90% of the gas that we produced. Over the past 2 decades, through efforts, deliberate and consistent efforts, we have reduced that to single digits. Today, national average of what we're flaring is somewhere around 7 to 8%. Within the NNPC portfolio, we're actually doing 5% in terms of flare, and we are not stopping there. We are committed to ending routine flare across all our portfolio by 2030. We've already achieved it within one of our portfolios, the joint venture that we have with Total. We've achieved the total end of routine flare there. We don't do routine flaring on Abami. We don't do routine flaring on Egina. These are FPSOs. And I can go on and on. So we are not folding our arms. But the bottom line is that anything that we do, the impact is not going to be much because, like you rightfully mentioned, our contribution to the global situation is very, very minimal. So going by Pareto principle, the focus should actually be on those guys who are doing so much. It's unfortunate that we are going to bear the brunt of the impact, but we also have to, remember just energy transition. Just energy transition says, look, don't deprive us the opportunity to make energy, because today this is the cheapest, this is the most affordable and the most accessible that we have. And yes, it doesn't have zero carbon footprint, but compared to coal or compared to oil, it has lesser carbon footprint. So it will still help our transition towards where we are going towards. The next one is what can engineers do? So like you rightfully said, the technology is not an issue. Engineers, by definition, we are innovators, right? We apply science to solve human practical problems that man has and make his life better. That's what engineering is all about. We can always find technology to solve these challenges, but the question is, will it be cheap? Will it be affordable? Will it make economic sense? So the question is the economics involved, and then also, you also alluded to it in terms of whether there's a legal and regulatory framework that allows us to do that. And I mentioned earlier that the PIA, provided slightly better terms for gas than what used to be before. We didn't have time to go through that because that's going to be very, very lengthy. But there's some relaxing or loosening of the, strangulating environment somewhat. It's not yet there. We're not where we're supposed to be, but some effort has been made, and there are opportunities where we can come in. Unfortunately, given the way our system works, you probably need a little bit of political alliance and political backing to get things done. Politicians, they are looking at what can be delivered immediately rather than what will take you 5, 10, 15 years because you want to do research and blah, blah, blah. So it's a Herculean task for engineers, but I believe engineers are capable. And basically, this is to say, let's keep thinking and let's keep innovating until we get there. The issue on, so what happens to infrastructure? Okay, fine. So yes, today we have 210 TCF, and we're not using much of it. In fact, I can tell you that on a portfolio basis, the bulk of our gas that we produce goes into export. The next bulk, so about maybe 40% or so of what we produce goes into export. Another 40% or so goes into storage. That's we are putting it back into the ground. That's what we do now to prevent the flaring that we used to do. What we use in the domestic market is probably about 15% or so of what we produce. So there's room that we can use more. If we have those infrastructure to deliver that gas as energy across board, it's going to spur further findings or further exploration targeted specifically towards gas. What we have found now is just incidental to oil. It's a nuisance, if you will. But when the need is created, you can be sure that nature will cause a vacuum. So there's so much of this stuff. We speculate that there's over at least 600 TCF. Okay, so what the estimated time I gave was for the 210 that we currently have. Certainly, it's not for the 600 TCF. And who knows, they may be even much more than it. So there shouldn't be worries about if we're able to get the infrastructure right, what will happen to the current gas. We'll just explore for more and we'll produce more. Today, there's a lot that we just cap because we don't want to, because it's not economically rewarding to do anything about it. But there are a lot of opportunities in that. There's a question about so what we do with abandoned wells, right? I guess the gentleman that's asked that, I guess you're doing something to do with geothermal, right? Maybe geothermal energy. And the good thing is, if you already have a well, right, you know that for every drop in terms of depth, you have a temperature gradient which you can exploit, right, to set up your geothermal unit or whatnot. So yes, that would be an interesting one, to be honest. And I would like to encourage you as much as I can. I'm just a little bolt or something in a gigantic system. But honestly, if there's something I can do to maybe facilitate access in terms of your research, I would honestly love to do that. So Oga Shegun has my contact details. Maybe you can reach and then we can see if there are opportunities that you can leverage on. But I'm one of those people within the system that is championing the fact that for our abandoned wells, let's think about geothermal. And even for our, whenever we do abandoning of any of our offshore installations, I would say let's think of offshore wind also as a way of, doing that. So there's opportunities, and we just need to innovate our way through that. I believe that's all.
Yeah, I think that's all for this round. Thank you so much. We will take the last 3-1. Please, we've got 4 minutes. If you can go straight to the point, and Engineer Dan will answer then, and that will be all. Apologies for the ones we are not able to take. We believe we can maybe gather them together and respond to this. So, Engineer Kofowurola, please, in 30 seconds, can you ask your question? And Engineer Dr. Abdulrasheed Babalola and Engineer Chibuike would follow through. Please go ahead, Engineer Kofowurola.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Engineer Dan, for this expository presentation. Just a quick one. I am looking into considering our collective attitude towards projects into exploring gas for energy source. I'm looking into having something like a modular system for gas generation. So I wouldn't know if there's any work ongoing on that, which I can tag into, because considering comparing gas exploration for energy generation and what we have on ground, like having a modular PV system and modular wind energy source. I wouldn't know if there's any work ongoing as regards modular gas energy generation, so that individuals may be able to tag into a safe and economically viable technology. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Engineer Kufowurala. Engineer Dr. Abdulrashid Babalola, FNIC, please go ahead and ask your question.
Thank
30
you.
seconds, please.
Thank you for this opportunity. I most appreciate Engineer Dan Roy for this beautiful knowledge sharing, and indeed, the ESCO of Glasgow for bringing this to our door. My questions, even though I've earlier typed it on the chat box, but I must. Okay, the first one is talking of energy transition. The engineer, Dan mentioned the greenhouse gas that is being generated by the Nigerian oil company as compared to cement. And I am worried because we that are living in Niger Delta area here, we do experience, black soot and the rest, which we know is due to gas flaring. Now, how can Nigeria leverage its abundant natural resources, such as solar and wind energy, to accelerate the energy transition and, of course, enhance energy security and its sustainability in our country? That's my first question. The second one is that what policies and strategies is the Nigerian government implementing? When I say the Nigerian government, I mean NNPC, to promote the adoption of renewable energy technologies and reduce dependence on fossil fuel. I think this is the question that I'm worried about regarding the global warming that we're experiencing, especially now in Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your questions. And Engineer Ralph Chubike, please, in 30 seconds, ask your question. Thank you, sir. Can you unmute yourself and ask a question, Engineer Chubike? I'm not sure I can hear us. So, Engineer Dan, can you go ahead and just answer those questions, and that will be us for tonight.
Thank you very much once again for those comments, as well as those very, very brilliant issues raised. So on modular gas development opportunities, what I will say is that it's a question of economics. Because when you invest, you need several units of your, should I say, product to spread your cost over. And gas, because of the large volume it occupies, the volume you require to recover your investment usually requires, is huge and requires, let me say, a long time. And that is one of the reasons why gas is sold on the basis of long-term contracts. It's not like oil, where you can just sell that day's production, literally. For gas, the volume you need to recover, a chunk of investment might require you producing continuously for, let's say, 7 years, 9 years, 10 years. So that is a challenge to modularization, because modularization entails just having a small portable unit that you can have anywhere, and then once you're done, you move on to another place and all that. That is not to say that we can't innovatively find a way around it. Today we are discussing about floating LNGs, which is one of those I would say modular implementations that we're trying to have. For gas, honestly, it's going to be difficult, especially for in-country usage, unless if you can. So there's a company somewhere in River State that they've tried to set up a small, what we call a mini LNG. And the whole concept is you produce the LNG, put them into trucks, and then truck them to in-country wherever they are needed. But then you also need regasification facilities where the customers are. So there's a lot of complex issue. Maybe what I would say is that for this issue, it's not something we can talk about it on a maybe high level, it's something that maybe when there's specific opportunities and you have a specific idea, What I can do personally, again, Ogashegun has my details, is to maybe channel you to the right people within the organization who you can have those kinds of discussions with, if you have ideas in that regard. The FNSE, sorry, sir, I forgot your name, but you know, we have to give respect to whom respect is due, and any fellow of our society needs double respect in my own view. So thank you very much, sir, for the comments you also made and the questions you asked. Maybe just as a sidetrack, most of the black suit that we experience within the Niger Delta, if we're going to face reality, it has nothing to do with gas flaring. It has everything to do with what we call illegal refining. Because what the illegal refiners do is basically do inefficient processing. You know, when you take crude, normally, there are a lot of processes that you can do to gain or to extract value from them. This include distillation, this include hydro-treating, hydro-cracking, catalytic cracking, polymerization, so many processes. So what these guys do is they simply do a simple distillation process, and the rest of it is just basically wasted. Okay, so what you see, honestly speaking, with all due respect and with all sense of responsibility, sir, it has nothing to do with gas flaring, because we have reduced gas flaring, like I said, from over 90% of what we produce to very single digits. So right now, those areas where you see gas being flared, there are areas where it is uneconomical to actually put in place a gas flare solution. And that's why we're doing the National Gas Flare Commercialization Program, to say, okay, can small people with small, modular type converters, whether it is something that you can use to produce LPG or something like that, come there, do something for 2-3 years, finish up the thing and move on. So again, some things have been done with that regard. The other challenge in terms of the illegal refining, it's something that is beyond us, beyond NNPC as a company, and it's a sovereignty issue. It's an issue that Nigeria has to deal with from a socio-economic perspective. And again, if we're to talk about that, it's going to take us the whole day. So maybe we'll just leave that matter there. But around the issue about what we can do with respect to energy security, there's no two ways about it, sir. We have to prioritize what is in our best interest. It's as simple as that. And what is in our best interest today is that we have energy poverty, one of the worst cases of energy poverty globally. And wherever we can get this energy cheaply, let us prioritize that. Let us focus on that. Why are people paying so much for diesel today? Why are people paying within Port Harcourt axis? I don't know if you've heard the Tampo fire. Why are people patronizing that? It's because that is the only option that they have. If we can somehow find a solution that will make the authentic thing available and affordable with ease, I think it will resolve a lot of challenges. So energy security is very, very key, and we just have to focus on how do we solve our needs now. I don't want to go into that because, again, we're out of time, but very, very apt, I think, remarks on that. Then on the part about renewable energy, to address dependency on fossil fuel. Personally, I align myself with the OPEC position. OPEC has taken a position that says, look, let energy transition not just be about transiting from fossil fuel to non-fossil fuel, but let it be about transiting, within the context of every country. Look at the energy transition that makes sense to you. Today, the energy transition that makes sense to Nigeria is transiting from biomass, in my own view, to gas. That's the one that makes the easiest sense. Of course, in some regions, like in the north, you can transit maybe from biomass to solar. And in some other regions, you can transit from biomass maybe to hydro. So let's have a mix. That's all I'm saying. Let's have a mix of renewable energy solutions that can address our energy poverty, irrespective of where it is coming from. Let the conversation around how much carbon footprint can this cheap energy source generate, let it be secondary, because everything is relative. At least Albert Einstein taught us that everything is relative. If we compare our situation to most of the world, honestly speaking, again, I go back to Pareto principle. Even if we stop polluting, quote and unquote, even if you stop using fossil fuel, we're not going to make any difference. It's too insignificant to make an impact anywhere. But if we're going to do that, it means we're putting our people at risk, because our people will not have access to energy. We have a young, thriving population. If you don't give them energy that they can pursue legitimate enterprise, what do you think will happen? The alternative becomes, possible, because clearly today we have socio-economic issues, rise in crime, rise in, things like that, simply because people are frustrated. People don't have an option. So let's first of all provide that option first. It's somebody who has eaten that you can now have a discussion on whether the food tastes better or not. First thing first, let's solve the hunger. Then we can now talk about quality of the food. But thank you very much. Very, very apt comments. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Engineer Dan. This is fantastic. You've really dealt with the issues and the questions. It's an interesting topic. It touches on everyone's life. And so we want to appreciate you for your time that you have spent and for everyone that has joined us. So before we round it up, I will just call the branch chairman, who would probably say a few words, and then say thanks for us for everything that you have said. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, please go ahead, sir.
Can you hear me? Yeah,
Okay,
okay,
yeah. Yeah, you know,
okay.
yes.
Thank you very much. I think it's a very, very interesting topic there. And thanks, Dan, for a very wonderful presentation. I think we had a very big compromise within our platform. We're just trying to, how to extend this event. And I thank everyone for for your patience. Such an interesting topic. We couldn't just say it's 1 hour, we have to close it. I was also enjoying the whole discussion here. And I think it's something we can also, progress further. Thank you, Dan Roy, for this. And just as many people really want your contact, and we're hoping that we could, through NSC Glasgow, progress some of the discussions. And just to say, we have a conference that is coming up in July, and this gives us a better platform to discuss. I'm hoping that we'll be able to bring you to Glasgow, and then we can have really a better engagement with you and possibly another persons that may come from the NNPC. We are also, for those who are into research, you have an opportunity to also present. We made it open. And so whichever area of engineering practice, we'll be able to give you opportunity to present. And just to say, Engineer Dan, just a final word from you, and then we can just transition into our monthly meeting. And I want to appreciate everyone. You have a lot of personalities here, but because of time, I won't be able to mention names. The NSC executive, ESCO member, and I want to appreciate everyone, the president of NSC, Engineer Margaret Ogunta Life NSC, all the support we receive from the headquarters. We can't just overlook that. And thank you to everyone, our branch members, for all the work we're doing and pushing the barrier and raising the bar of NSC here in Glasgow. Thank you very much. So, Engineer Dan, just your final words, and then.
Thank you very much, sir. And thank you very much to the entire team, the team of the ESCOs, as well as the entire membership of NSC Glasgow branch for this opportunity. I don't take this opportunity for granted. Forgive me, I'm a Christian, so maybe I will say something. There was this donkey that Jesus Christ rode on when he was coming into Jerusalem, right? And then people were throwing, expensive material and clothing and whatever in front of the donkey to step upon. If for any moment that donkey thinks that they were doing it because of it, then that donkey will have missed it. They are doing it because of what it carried. And I believe I have been able to channel, if you will, some thinking, like I disclosed at the beginning of our discussion, from thinking across the industry from so many professionals. So I'm just that donkey that, carried that agglomeration of those ideas and shared it here. And I'm grateful, for the warm reception. And definitely, I won't mind, if the opportunity is there to come to Glasgow. Like I said, I have fond memories of Glasgow. I did my master's in applied instrumentation and control in Glasgow, Caledonian University. I still run a mentorship program with the university. And I enjoyed my stay while I was there in Glasgow. So obviously it will be something to look forward to if it works out. But other than that, thank you very much. I appreciate everybody who made a contribution, everyone who had asked a question, everybody who turned out. Thank you very much for listening to the donkey that carried something that was bigger than it.
Yeah.
Okay. In the characteristics of humility, and you have made some But again, just to reiterate, today is his birthday and he took out time for this presentation. So we really appreciate it. Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so we'll follow up with you to find out about the slides. We can take that offline to discuss what we could share. Okay, thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you. So I will exit and have a great meeting, everyone.
All right, thank you. And this brings us to the end of the webinar. Feel free to